Fabulous. Thank you so much. I will call the Governance, Audit, and Compliance Committee on your agenda. We don't have a quorum to act, but as the normal practice is, we'll present this committee meeting to the board and we can act on our action items at that juncture. I also want to say that we started the Governance and Compliance Committee, and I persuaded Jody to put the word audit into our committee because I think pulling audit forward and making sure people understand that we do have that as a top priority was important. So we are now the Governance, Audit, and Compliance Committee. And I guess we'll move into safety briefings.
Thank you, Chairwoman Lanahan, and thank you for your comments about audit. We really appreciate it. And thank you, committee members. My name is Rasheed Brin, and I am the manager of internal audit. I've been here with JEA for the last 6 years. The first 3 years an IT auditor, and the last 3 years a senior IT auditor. And just recently, on July 1st, I was promoted to manager of internal audit. So again, thank you, Chairwoman Lanahan, on your kind words about our department. As you noted, I'll be doing the safety briefing for this event. For those of us participating downtown, in the event of emergency, our security department will call 911 and coordinate any required evacuation. And for the emergency evacuation route, we will not use the stairs. We'll assemble at the parking lot on the corner of Church and Ocean Street as designated here on the PowerPoint. If anyone needs medical assistance or help with a safely evacuating, please notify, please notify a security officer. Lastly, have good computer etiquette. Thank you, and that is a safety briefing. Back to you, Chairwoman Lanahan.
Well, we're thrilled, Lee, with your opportunity to lead internal audit. And just for everybody on the call, I did have the opportunity to leave a message for Steve to thank him for his years of service to this organization, but he is officially retired, so he must be sleeping in this morning somewhere.
Hey, Marty. Marty.
I knew you couldn't be quiet.
At the risk of correcting you, that's good. We do appreciate Lee's here. Rasheed also got promotion that same day, and so brand new in this role, and then we threw them both in to give you all the updates on where things were. So
perfect.
Thank you.
I apologize. I didn't clarify that, but yes, Thank you very much. Thank you. So Landon, do we have any comments from the public?
Not yet. I'll give the brief abbreviated version this morning. Good morning, everyone. For public comments, you'll notice a couple of icons at the very bottom of your screen. We have enabled the raised hand feature through the participant pane. If you click that and choose your name and raise your hand, we can go ahead and recognize you to speak. However, if you'd like to go ahead and provide your comment via text, you can click on the chat button in the bottom right corner. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pause for a second and see if we have anybody that raises their hands or submits a comment. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to y'all. Thank you.
Great, thank you. You know, it seems that you finish one audit cycle and you start another. So John has joined us today to go over our 2022 audit plan. So John, I believe you're in the room there.
I am, yes.
Perfect. Well, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Lanahan and members of the committee. For the record, I'm John DeSanto. I am the Ernst & Young partner in charge of your audit, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to present your 2022 audit plan. As Chair Lanahan had said, it is audit time again. It does seem to be perpetual in that you're always being audited by somebody. I wanted to point out, I know those of you online can't see her, but Natalia Di Ferdinand is here with me. She's the audit manager. She's been the manager on your account for the past 3 years, but those of you that are here in person, if you want to just raise your hand, Natalia, just want you to know who she is, and she is an integral part of our audit team. With that, if you just turn to the executive summary, which is on page 1. As I'll start on the left and move to the right. Key business priorities. I am happy to say we did complete our compliance audit of your FEMA program for 2021. We just issued our report about a month ago. There were no findings, no instances of non-compliance or anything that needs to be reported to the committee, but I am happy to say that we did complete that audit and it was a clean audit. Other key priorities that will impact the 2022 audit. Plant Vogel will continue to monitor the disclosure and accounting requirements, if any, for that particular item. I think in this case, it's probably just a matter of updating disclosures for current events, but we are keeping our eye on that, as that is something pretty significant to JEA and certainly future commitments. The last item here, GASB 87 on leases. This is a new standard. There are a bunch of new accounting standards that are required to be adopted for fiscal 2022. This standard on leases has the potential to have the most impact. What it requires is that all leases other than power purchase agreements would be recorded on your balance sheet as an asset and a corresponding lease liability. And I'll have some further comments about that in the next couple of minutes. If you move over to what's new and next, and again, these are all the GASB accounting standards that are effective for fiscal 2022 year. And the very first one you see there is that GASB statement number 87 on leases. The good news is management has completed their review and assessment of all the lease contracts and other contracts that could have leases embedded within them. And the total gross asset and liability is about $2 million, which management has considered to be immaterial and therefore will not be recording on the balance sheet for the 2022 year. Moving into 2023, as you know, I believe that's the fiscal year in which the new lease on the new building starts. That will be material. So 2023, we expect to see some lease assets and liabilities being recorded in accordance with this standard on the books of JEA. But for 2022, it has been determined by management to be immaterial. So our testing of that for 2022 will be to make sure that management has considered all potential contracts that may have leases in them, just to make sure that the number is not anything significantly larger than the $2 million. These other standards will not have any impact on your financial statements, but they are effective for the current fiscal year. Moving to the digital commitment, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, Ernst & Young started to make our audit more digital, where we're obtaining details of all of your journal entries and transactions, and we're analyzing the data to provide us with a higher quality, if you will, of audit evidence. And what we're able to do is we're able to trace all transactions, whether they're revenues or expenses, through your system to either an ultimate cash receipt or a cash disbursement. Historically, we've done that for your revenue and your cash revenue, your receivables, and your cash receipt cycle. We've also done it for some expenses like payroll and other types of expenses. For this fiscal year, we're going to take a look at implementing our fixed asset digital analyzer and make our audit more digital in the area of fixed assets as well. And what that really means to the committee is it allows us to review 100% of transactions and just focus on any anomalies. So an example of anomaly in a fixed asset transaction would be if something's recorded as a fixed asset and maybe the credit is to a revenue account. rather than say a liability account or ultimately a cash payment. So we're able to look digitally, if you will, through all of your entries, looking for those types of anomalies. The good news is historically, we haven't found anything like that. So obviously we do not expect to find anything in the future, but we're continuing to make our audit more digital and data driven. As far as our timeline for the 2022 audit, moving to the far right, we're in the process of performing our planning procedures. A lot of that we do behind the scenes, and your team doesn't get to see a lot of that. In the upcoming months of August and September, that's where we start our review of your different processes and systems and testing some interim type of transactions and activity. And then we do start our year-end auditing the final year-end balances during the months of October through December. And I will point out with timing, many of you probably remember that in the prior year, because of your involvement in the City of Jacksonville General Employees Pension Plan, as a member of that, JEA records your allocable share of all of those pension amounts. So we can't complete our audit until the City of Jacksonville auditors complete their audit. And in talking with management here at JEA, we understand that timing may be a little bit more consistent with next year. With where it was last year, meaning the audit may not be completed until the middle of January. I know management's doing their best to put pressure on the city and working with their auditors to see if there's any way to accelerate that timeline. I have discussed this with Chair Lanahan, and we do not believe that would be an issue should the audit need to move into the middle of January again, like it did in the prior year. But just wanted to make all of you aware of that. That is something that both we and management have our eyes on, but that is something that we will be working through.
So John, just for the committee's benefit, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I've asked the team to kind of put some pressure on the city, but also candidly to check if there's any unintended consequence, like reporting to our financial partners if we don't get it on time. And it may be that we just push with our financial reporting partners, push the date out 60 days, which they'll be fine with. I'd rather give ourselves some room because I think this might happen going forward. But we're having those conversations now.
Great. Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Marty, Joe here. I don't have the city charter, Article 21 in front of me, but I do believe it calls for JEA to do a yearly audit, which I thought was supposed to be done at the end of the calendar year. And if I'm right, it's almost an inconsistency where, we're relying on them, and if they're not done, we can't meet the suspense that's in that article or in Charter 21. So maybe we need to look at the article or Charter 21 to see, but I'm almost sure it's supposed to be done by the end of calendar year 21. And if they're not done, we really can't do based on what, John just said.
Yeah, we're going to review some other charter opportunities to clean up some of the provisions in our charter at future meetings. I think that's perfect to notate that. You're the charter expert. I am not. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. And Jody, if we can record that as part of what we've already discussed relative to charter cleanup, that'd be great.
Yeah, Regina Ross is in the room right now, and she was just taking a note of that specific provision and making sure that we don't want to be inconsistent with our charter provisions, and so we'll take a look at that, Marty. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
Sure. And then I'm sorry, John. One quick question on the Gatsby 87 for the $2 million lease.
Yes.
Is that a threshold? Like, so if JEA has over 2 million, then it'll wind up showing up on our balance sheet.
Yeah, it's there's really no rule of thumb as far as a threshold, but if you look at you would evaluate it in terms of JEA's total assets and total expenses. And as long as we're within, I'd say, about a 3 to 5% range, and lower than that, we would be okay. Our materiality for your audit is in the 30 million range. So
Right.
I would say as long as it didn't approach $10 million, we probably would not blink an eye at not recording it. You have the opportunity to record it, of course. And you will be recording once the new building lease agreement starts, because it's based on the commencement of the lease agreement. So once that new lease agreement starts, that will be material, and that is something that would be recorded. But all of the other leases at this time are just not material enough to record.
Great. Thanks, John.
Yep. Yes, sir. Moving down again, the far right under the 2022 audit plan, our audit strategy, including significant risks identified. There's a couple of slides, about 3 to 4 slides later on. I'm happy to say that our audit strategy is consistent with prior periods, and that makes sense because the nature of JEA's operations from an accounting and audit perspective have not really changed. There are two changes I did want to highlight, though. One of them was on the leases for GASB 87. And like I said, we are going to do some work around the completeness of the analysis provided by management to make sure that it's not something that, we can say between us doesn't approach 10 million. Again, management got to 2 million. So we feel pretty confident we won't get there, but we are going to do some work around that. The second thing I just wanted to make this committee aware of is the St. John's Pension Board has requested this year that we prepare a separate audited financial statement for their board. Their board just wants a separate financial statement. The numbers, the balance sheet and activity statement for that pension plan, those have always been audited because those are included in JEA's financial statements. They just want those numbers pulled out in a separate financial statement that they can call their own. So that's a slight increase, if you will, in our scope that we have not done in the past several years. But to comply with their wishes, we will be putting a separate financial statement together for the St. John's pension plan. So
And
again, just wanted
we did
to make
that
you-
years and years and years ago. So that's yeah.
I think I found 2016 or 2017 was the last one that perhaps Ernst & Young had done those audits. So it's not going to take much effort to just pull out the numbers we already audit for JEA's financial statements and put them in a separate financial statement for that particular pension plan. But again, just wanted to make all of you aware of that. And lastly, on that far right under the audit plan, we will continue to use JEA's internal auditors for some audit assistance. I do have a slide later on that I'll just point out the specific audit areas they'll be providing assistance, working with us as members of our team. We get about 200 to 250 hours of internal audit time, and that roughly saves you between $30,000 and $35,000 in audit fees. So just again, for the benefit of the committee, wanted to point that out. And I've covered most of what's in my presentation, so I'll ask if you could just jump ahead to slide 11, titled Involvement of Internal Auditors and Others. Oh, I'm sorry, it's one more. I think it's up next. Sorry. My numbers must be a little different. It's 15. One more, please. There you go. So as I mentioned, we are going to be receiving the assistance of JEA's internal auditors. These are the estimated hours and specific areas that they'll be assisting our audit team with. We do try and rotate the areas they work on just so they get to see from an external audit perspective, different areas of JEA's operations from an accounting standpoint. But these will be the areas and an estimate of the hours they'll be providing assistance to for us for this year.
John, have you met with Lee about the internal audit? Yet?
I'm not sure, Natalia, have we gone over this with them yet? Or is that something we're still working on?
Preliminarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the answer was yes, we have had a preliminary discussion, probably just a high level of the hours and the specific areas, but not the specific work program, the specific audit procedures.
I'm sorry, this is Lee. I just wanted to add that
the hours are budgeted in our audit plan for this year, and we're ready to assist the team here, the EY team.
Great, thanks, Lee.
Yeah, and we have historically, previously, several years ago, we were using the City of Jacksonville's internal auditors, which I never could understand because JEA has their own internal auditors. So I think either last year or the year before we made that switch. And again, we've gotten great assistance from them. The quality of their work is outstanding. It meets our high standards for audit quality, et cetera. So we would expect nothing less moving forward, of course.
I think we can thank Chair Lanahan for that switch.
Yeah, that's been a great switch. These next few items on this page, and this is the last thing I'm going to cover regarding the audit plan, these are the required communications. These are the items related to audit planning that auditors are required to communicate to those charged with governance in organizations like this committee. So the terms of our audit engagement, we actually have a contract and an engagement letter with all of you. There have been no changes to the provisions of those agreements over the duration of the term of the contract with you. So I would refer you to review those terms in our engagement letter. I know management's got copies of it, but if it's easier, anybody's interested in it, you certainly can reach out to me and I'll be happy to provide you with a copy of that engagement letter. As far as our overall plan scope, timing of the audit, again, I've already covered that previously in my opening comments. There were no significant issues discussed with management or anybody else in your organization regarding our continuing retention as your auditors. And the last item here, inquiries regarding the risk of material misstatement, fraud, noncompliance with laws and regulations, any new related party relationships or transactions. We will be conducting those inquiries as we perform our planning procedures. So if our team has not yet reached out to you, they should be doing it during the months of August and September.
And if I can interject, John, just a reminder for my fellow board members, the utility has used E&Y for a very long time, and it's customary in corporate to shift out and transition your audit team, but in the utility industry, it's not, the duration of relationships is much longer than in the corporate world. Having said that, I've asked the staff to take a look at what they recommend going forward, because we are technically at the end of our contract with E&Y. Having said that, we've got some, I think 3 or maybe 5 years of extension period. So we're not at risk of not having an auditor next year, but we just need to have a plan for what we're going to do for the next year's audit, because it'll be here before we know it.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Chair Lanahan. One other thing, though, I did want to mention, there's been some recent media coverage regarding Ernst & Young and a particular settlement with the SEC. I would just offer up, if anybody has any questions regarding that, you certainly can reach out privately to me. I have talked with Chair Lanahan and I think Joe Orfano about that, to apprise them of that. But if anybody else would like a private conversation with me, certainly feel free to reach out to me individually. Nothing that affects or should impact the quality of our audits or our relationship with JEA.
So I'll reinforce that for this committee. In my conversations with John and my own research, this did not have anything to do with our audit plan or our audit results or the quality of their work for us. So I'm comfortable, but I would encourage anybody who has concerns to reach out to John directly.
Great. And that concludes my presentation. I'll just open it up for any other questions.
Any questions? John, having been the chair of finance and audit for, gosh, I'm a year and a half now, I will just tell you that you work very closely with our staff, and staff works very closely with you. And remind everybody, last year we really didn't have any significant issues that you needed to call me through. the process. So we'll encourage you, if that is different this year, you've got my phone number, you use it frequently, just reach out to me and we'll work through any concerns you have together.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Chair Lanahan.
Any questions for John? We flew right through that.
Thanks, John.
All right,
Good morning.
great. Then Dan, we're gonna talk about identity theft protection in our risk assessment.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lanahan and the board members. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, JEA team. And can you all hear me okay? All right. So this is an annual program, annual risk assessment performed for JEA's Identity Theft Protection Program. There are a couple of standards that JEA has to comply, and they include federal standards and one Florida information protection requirement, Fair Credit FCRA, and the FACTA. These two standards are applied to any agency or any entity that covers and stores data related to PII, more than 50,000 customers, and JEA qualifies for that, and that's the reason for this program. This program requires to have a formal program and report to the board or board-appointed committee once a year. This year, due to some scheduling issues, we are doing 2 year worth of data, and that was my mistake in planning it. The next slide, please. So risk assessment approach for us has been two-part. One is the data that is acquired by JEA, which we acquire from the customers. And the other part is the stored data, the data that JEA acquires over the time period and stored in a secured manner. So the data that is acquired from the customer is through service channels, and data that is stored is through our technology controls. So before we get into some part of data, I just wanted to share the summary of the results. And so these 2 years, the data, again, JEA program has shown that it is in a very good commanding position and securing the PII data. Both the teams, which primarily work the customer services and the technology services, has done a very commendable job. JEA Identity Protection Program continues to see strong performance in detecting and responding to cases of suspected identity theft. No reportable data breach has been recorded, and that's very critical. No reportable data breach has been recorded for the calendar year 2020 and 2021. And as per that, JEA is compliant with the FACTA, FCRA, and FIPA requirements. Additionally, it was noted that appropriate controls are in place to prevent, detect, and mitigate the identity theft. Improvements to cybersecurity controls and metrics have been recommended, which you may see further down. And it is based on the program results. In a rare event, if identity theft occurs, steps and controls are there and they are taken to identify the root cause, and corrective actions are taken. So that was a summary, and let's go into the data which was reviewed. So JEA Identity Protection Program data, you can go to previous slide, please. At an average, JEA opens around 47,297 accounts. This was the average between the 2 years. And there were 12 confirmed cases of identity theft. So you can see the number is very small. The 5-year average for 2017 to 2021 has been 20 cases and 12 identity theft confirmed cases. So identity theft confirmed cases in 2020 were 13, and identity theft cases in 2021 was 9. Along with that, what is the most important part is how we respond to that. And you can see that JEA response, average response time has been 18 days. So from the time of the complaint to all the way to resolution with the customer, and this may involve sometime help of JSO and help of all investigating agencies, along with all the tools available to JEA customer services staff, it is just within 18 days on average. And we compare ourselves to IRS, which lately they did not publish this year's data, but last year's data showed that they had 120 plus days average resolution time. Now on the some other numbers, 10,200 was the average 5-year average monetary involvement. So those numbers, though not significant from financial point of view, but we value the customer's trust. And that is why it's very critical for JEA to investigate all the cases. Our recovery average has been 30% in past 5 years. And you can see a chart there with monetary recovery losses. And we are in 2021, it's been 3%, but 2020, it's been 33%. And I just wanted to let you know that 2021, all cases are not closed yet. We are still reviewing those cases. And still some cases we are investigating and trying to follow up with recovery. So data loss prevention, the second critical element is the protection of the data that JEA has stored in our systems. And there are many ways we can have situations. What we have design controls that alert us if a possible or suspected data breach is happening. And our controls are designed in a manner that we can prevent it even before the breach happens. And that is the key part. So as I said before, that there was no data breach. And these were the alerts that were generated and investigated, followed up by the teams, confirmed independently by SIP compliance to show there were 63 of cloud storage issues. There are some printer issues. You can see the numbers. JEA alerts for the past 3 years that involve social security numbers have been 60 events which had 50 plus social security numbers. They were controlled before they could leave the protected area or JEA control systems. And 150 instances where then when there were data was being moved between 10 and 49. And for 5 and 9, there were 176 instances. And this part is the most critical part of our data protection program. Reason being, you can see the chart on the right shows average data breach and how much the cost is. Average data breach cost has been increasing. You can see from 3.86 million to 4.24 million in 2021, and it has been going up with the years progressing. And that is why it's very critical for JEA to maintain a very good program, which I must confirm that our team, JEA Customer Services and TS, both have done it very in a commendable way. So, and as part of the risk assessment, it is also required to discuss some risk and improvement strategies. There were a couple of improvement strategies that were reported to in the last meeting. And we mentioned it, that how they were completed, what is their current status. So data registry was designed in which we now have a registry where people within JEA who are authorized to handle PI data and transfer it outside JEA are required to register so that we can validate that. And that has to be approved by a director of the department. That was completed in 2019. Post-account opening of audits. So we have an independent post-account opening audit, which is not the person who opens the account, an independent individual is again required to review that data. That is also in place now. Identity and access management based access control for personally identifiable information, PII data. We have a PAM program that is being set up. That will be done in 2022. Customer PI information upload solution that is in design phase. We are working with TS where customers have presented with COVID more of a need where they can submit PII data. And we don't believe that the emails are the most reliable means. So we are working on a solution where they can, instead of coming over to customer service centers, they can upload the data, which our customer service reps can review that. PII security assessment is also planned for 2023. My group will be completing a complete PII program assessment in 2023. I think that would conclude my presentation. If there is any questions, please.
Yeah, Dan, real quick, Joe DeSalvo, great presentation. Is there any issue with JEA being able to keep up with either state or federal regulatory, guidance on PII security and all that kind of stuff, or are we able to keep up with, whatever the higher regulatory guidance is?
Good question. As you may be aware that the regulatory environment continues to evolve almost every month. We hear new regulations come both from federal as well as the state bodies. And we have a compliance oversight committee, which have multiple SLT members, our officers, and they participate. My group's responsibility is to bring them. Recently, there is a NACHA requirement, had a big change. So that was the major change for us. There were a couple of security requirements from Florida State also. So we are able to keep up with the requirements. JEA has a good oversight on all these requirements. So far, I've not seen any concern so my response to you is yes, we have been able to track all these. We are able to communicate to the business owners, system owners, and are able to follow up and monitor the compliance requirements.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll remind all of us that Chair Baker had the wise idea to get a shade meeting to talk to us, gosh, almost a year and a half ago about our potential data breaches and how secure we were. It was very candidly helpful for me. Jay, it may be that, in the next year, we do another such update because cybersecurity is really important because that is obviously a reputational issue for us. And it takes one bad guy to figure it out to have us be in crisis. I'm thrilled that we were reporting in the way we are, but it's really, in my mind, about how we anticipate future potential attacks.
That sounds good. Thank you.
And the other thing I'll just offer, Dan, in my industry, and I'm a banker, the number one issue for identity theft in our industry is email account takeovers. So we have put in place as an industry mandatory callbacks because people are hijacking CFOs and other folks' emails and asking for some pretty bad things. So we'd love to talk about that further at a later date.
I think you're so right about that. There has been multiple attempts, I think even in JEA, where people, the senior management, finance also received emails where people try to emulate as if they are either customer or vendor and try and manipulate for their own advantage. So my department looks into that, and we have controls. We have modified in last year itself many procedures working with finance and procurement. Many procedures were modified to just what you mentioned, use the callback, not just assume the information that is coming in the email, but use the callback and confirm. And we also have now security questions for the vendors. So if somebody tries to emulate a vendor, where it's not just send me an email, we verify certain other information which only the vendor knows, and then we confirm with the vendor direct response person, direct contact to confirm the person who gave the information is accurate. So
Perfect.
thanks again
Thank
for
you.
being-
Good old fashioned picking up the phone always works.
Yes, yes, very much.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you, Dan. Don't wait till next year to come back and make a report. If you need us, we're here for you.
Certainly. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Well, that ethics officer report.
Morning. Good morning. How's everybody? All right. Good morning, Chair Lanahan and board members. Thank you for the opportunity to present the ethics officer report this month. As I embark on my 19th year at JEA, I'm excited to see the importance that we have placed on ethics within JEA. I believe that a culture of compliance and ethics should be built into the DNA of our organization. These slides include data through June 2nd. As it relates to the inquiry categories, secondary employment remains the largest, with conflict of interest and gifts closely behind. As we onboard new employees, these areas present the most questions as it relates to city government policies, because many of them are not aware of having to disclose their secondary employment or clearly understand what to inquire as it relates to gifts and conflicts of interest. With our employees being able to work where they work best, there are multiple ways that employees can inquire, of course. We've had 67 cases this year. 40 have been submitted via email, 22 by phone, and then 5 in person. Only one of the inquiries that I've received resulted in additional research needing to be done on that case and inquiry. Now that I have about 6 months of data for FY22, I do begin to start to forecast for the end of the year, and I anticipate we'll probably end this year very close to what we ended last year in terms of inquiries. The open government training that was required by the City of Jacksonville was a success based on participant feedback that we received from the training. On a 5-point scale, the average score was 4.39. The training took place during the month of February, and the presenters was our very own Regina Ross, OGC JEA Chief Legal Officer, and Kirby Oberdorfer, the City of Jacksonville Director of Office of Ethics, Compliance, and Oversight. They both presented the training via WebEx with an interactive tool called Slido. The last session they did was recorded for those employees and managers that missed the session. Our annual business ethics refresher training was also a success. Again, it was a computer-based training that was assigned to approximately 1,800 employees, non-management employees, and we also received high remarks that it met their expectations. Currently, we have about 9 employees that have not taken the training due to either some type of medical leave or military leave, but they are assigned the training and will be expected to take it within 90 days of returning to work. We will continue to be innovative with both of our training courses for next year by incorporating some real life examples and some interactive learning exercises. This slide reflects what's coming up as we end this fiscal year. It's hard to believe that we're in the 4th quarter of FY22. And as you know, integrity is one of our core values at JEA, and we should do everything to ensure that we're measuring up to that. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, we agree with you. Ethics is job number 1 at the JEA, and really appreciate everything you've been doing to make sure that our rank and file understand our commitment to that. You'll see a little bit of crossover in Lee's report, and I will tell you, I was a little confused. I'm like, what does Willette do? What does Lee do? Because we'll get into that. So if Jody hasn't told you, I've asked her to kind of get with you guys to see you know, how we make sure that we're clear on separations of services, and maybe, you know, have you pick up more responsibility, or, you know, work more closely with Lee, but we'll get there at a future meeting.
Sounds great. Sounds really good. Thank you, Marty.
Any other questions or comments for Willette? Thank you, Willette. We really appreciate you. Lee.
Good morning, Chair Lanahan and committee members. Again, my name is Lee Montanez. I was formerly the manager of internal audit, but as of July 1st, the director of audit services. I thank you for the opportunity today for me to provide you with the audit services update. As a note, a couple weeks ago, and in preparation for my new role, I was reading an article from the North Carolina State Enterprise Risk Management Initiative program regarding, steps that were taken by several enterprises to re-energize ERM. The article described how strategic value of ERM can increase by improving communication. As we know, risk management is a priority as our organization needs timely and relevant data to better manage current and emerging risks. With this in mind, I've been working with the ERM team to evaluate our communication strategy, and I expect to make some changes later this year. As a first step in changing communication, and in tandem with the leadership team, we've identified 3 top risk trends that we thought were very important to present to this committee today. As the first 2 here on the list, it's well known that there are many factors, external factors, supply chain, the war in Ukraine, rising inflation, search for talent. This has created challenge not only for JEA, but for all industries. And the first one we have identified here is supply chain risk, which the challenge is the rolling risk of what becomes unavailable or lead time, increases. It started off with vehicles, with computer parts, transformers, metals. So that is the challenge that leadership is working on, and they have great plans in place to address it, but mostly it's external factors. The next risk that we find that we should be looking at is staffing, just because Jacksonville, even though it's grown, the amount of people that live in Jacksonville, there's more offerings of jobs. Unemployment during May was just 2.6%. So people have the ability not only to choose employers in the area, but to work remotely for any employer that offers them a job. So there are some challenges for staffing, but there are plans in place mostly to make sure that we improve our culture in order to retain our employees. And for those that are retiring, there's a good succession planning in place where transfer of knowledge is happening. The last risk I wanted to highlight has to do with fuels management. There are many challenges. Your natural gas, there's pipeline capacity. If it's pet coke, transportation. With coal, there were political issues in Colombia. And with limestone, we have some supplier issues in Mexico. Again, there's plans in place, there's contracts in place that guarantee, but there's always that financial and that operational risk of having to procure fuels at a higher price and to make that happen. So enterprise risk management will continue to assess these risks. And what they're doing is they've implemented this process called the business unit risk assessment, which is your bottom-up approach, where we're capturing all these risks from these departments, where they can be elevated to leadership and action can be taken in more of a timely manner. Before I move on to internal audit, do we have any questions with these?
This is an important one, and I think you all have picked the things that keep me up at night. but I want to make sure that past Chair Baker and Joe have a chance to weigh in as well.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. Yeah, Lee, I think that third one is absolutely huge, especially when we're looking at Columbia. Are we starting to look at alternate sources for pet coke out of curiosity? From the Columbia thing, I don't think we're going to know really what's going on probably for another 6 to 12 months. But with the newly elected president, yeah, I'm not so sure things will remain the same. But do we have any alternate? And I don't even know if that's in your area, but for alternate supply of the pet coke we're now getting from them, from Columbia?
So is Ricky or Ray on? I could answer that, or do you know?
So let me take a stab at it, and I think Ray Marshall is on too. We have a fuels committee, fuel purchase power committee that meets monthly to look at updates on where things are and where things stand. With the coal, pet coke, natural gas, things like even the cold weather in February of last year in Texas, and then the hot weather in this week in Texas, there are risks that are outside of our control. So what we've got is a contract with in Colombia to get coal, and right now that still seems stable and okay. And we'll keep on looking at other alternatives to keep that. We have stockpiles at the plant and have some options available. The flexibility of using natural gas, and then the possibility that Vogel's going to come on soon will help balance some of that out too. But I wasn't sure if Ray or Ricky, Ray might be on the line if she wants to add anything.
No, you stated it well. I'm here, Jay.
Okay.
Yes, you stated it well. And we are actively looking for just the reasons that have been identified for other sources, and not just pet coke, but also for other like limestone as well. And we're getting updates to see what other areas or other places are available.
I did want to add that the president-elect in Colombia had first indicated that he was planning to cut some of this coal shipments out. But the truth is with the ban in Russia, there are many countries in Europe that are asking Colombia to ramp up and to provide more coal. So the opportunity for that to happen, it's very slim.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. So moving on to internal audit. For internal audit, we are on track to complete the fiscal year 22 audit plan. Since our last meeting, we've completed several audits, including the TEA member audit, which we led for the 4th year in a row. We've been collaborating with a customer group, identifying opportunities and challenges related to the C2M project implementation. Currently, as you can see on the right, we have a slew of audits that are in progress right now, and we expect all of them to be completed before the end of this quarter. So for action plans, we currently have 27 open action plans. Management has closed 25 additional action plans during fiscal year. Some highlights relates to audits that we provided, audits related to culture, where some programs, David Emanuel and his team provided some programs related for trust, women in trade, for investment recovery. The process was revamped related to obsolete assets. And then for fuel management, the procedures related to heat curves were updated. Now, my final slide, and I know Chair Lanahan mentioned a little bit about forensic audit investigations. Hotline, this chart shows the hotline cases by allegations. As you can see, the 5-year average is higher than what we've been receiving for fiscal year 22. I'm going to currently work with Julie Moore and her team on trying to evaluate why this is happening, or do we have do we have to improve the way we communicate the hotline to our employees? Because a lot of these information around the hotline, they haven't been updated since pre-pandemic. So we may need to find another strategy in order to inform our employees of the existence of the hotline if they want to go ahead and use it. Finally, we added a senior forensic auditor. So the forensic audit team is now fully staffed. Well, that concludes my presentation. I'm glad to take any questions.
Any questions for Lee? No, great job. And thanks again for helping us save money by working with E&Y. We're glad you're staffed up and ready to continue to take on more. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Regina, we talked a little bit about the charter at the beginning of the meeting. We'll have you address our plans.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to the chair, committee members and board members, the JEA employees. Over the next few months, the legal team, me along with some of the other attorneys from the Office of General Counsel, will be reviewing the charter for possible amendments. We have noticed over our course of an initial review and in talking with staff that there are provisions that should be updated, provisions that probably should be modified to accommodate the way we do business. So over the next couple of months, what we'll be doing is meeting with staff members, possibly talking with some of you. I've had the opportunity to meet with Councilman Boylan, who is the liaison to the county, to the city council, to discuss how to move forward. The way that we plan to move forward is to, at our next meeting, we'll prepare a briefing sheet, which will identify portions of the charter that we believe should be amended or revised. We'll have, in the sheet, we will include what we believe the issue is, for example, vague language or language that just needs to be updated, language that has been previously amended and probably made the provision a little more confusing, language that should be added, and possibly language that should be deleted. We will talk to you about it. And what we'll be looking for is guidance as to prioritizing changes, when those changes should be brought, how you feel about some of those changes, and if you've identified additional changes. For example, General DeSalvo pointed out that there may possibly be an inconsistency in some of the language, and sometimes that happens with big documents when you're adding to, modifying. So we will be looking for those inconsistencies as well to help resolve those inconsistencies and make corrections as necessary. Again, we'll use the briefing sheet and we may bring it to you more than once. It'll be a working document. We'll be looking for guidance as to the modifications that we propose and any possible revisions, as well as timing for bringing the revisions for council approval. And if there are any questions for me, I'm available.
So Regina and Jody and I talked about this last week, and we understand that there's a timing cadence with the city council that's appropriate, and we'll be patient with that timing cadence, but we feel like it's important for us to do the work, even if city council says it's going to take a while for us to get to open this up, because it's important for us to be prepared and to really have a great opportunity to go deep into our charter and make recommendations. So we're going to do the work. I can't tell you the timing of when we'll present the work product to city council, but we're relying on our city council friends to help us through that process. So I just wanted to let you know of our decision to go ahead and move forward with our recommendations. Any questions for Regina?
Marty, Joe here. That's a great, I think that's a great initiative because it's very important, I think, as we see possible disconnects, a way of doing things better, either within our own documents or the city charter, that's great. So I applaud the initiative on that. I think that's going to be very important. So thank you.
Of course, thanks to the staff for willing to do the work. All right, Regina, I think more to come from you.
More to come.
Appreciate it. Speaking of kind of taking a look at our internal guidelines and documents, I'm going to pass it to Jordan, and we'll begin talking about the board policy manual and the bylaws. And Joe, I want to thank you. You really started this work a year ago, and we appreciate everything that you've done to help us kind of review those documents as well. But Jordan's going to talk about where we anticipate going forward.
Thank you, Chair Lanahan, and good morning to you and the committee members. It's good to see you all again. As you just stated, we want to talk about some proposed amendments to the JEA board bylaws and board policy manual, and I want to express my gratitude as well to General DeSalvo and Steve Tootin as well, who undertook a thorough review of these documents in 2020 as the City Council was doing a similar review to Article 21, the JEA Charter at that time as well. As you all are probably aware, the JEA Charter, which we've included in your appendix, requires that the JEA board have a board policy manual and certain rules, that the board review those rules on an annual basis, and that staff post those rules in a conspicuous area on the JEA website, JEA.com, which we have done and will continue to do. Really, the goal of this current review and what we have proposed today was to condense the board policy manual and the board bylaws without compromising any governance. We believe that this will allow for an ease of use and ease of understanding, especially as we onboard new board members over the coming years. We're thankful to have our current board now, but recognize that as new board members come on, we want them to be able to understand the way in which the board operates and has laid out the way in which they will operate. We have provided to you all in your package today copies of JEA's board's current governing documents, as well as the proposed changes. And on the following two slides, we have also offered two resolutions that the board can consider to make these changes effective at the August board meeting. And I want to express my thanks to Melissa Charleroy for her diligence in getting us to this point. It was a bit of a labor, and I'm thankful for her keeping us on the right track to be able to offer this to you all today. And we're happy to answer any questions and have any dialogue around the changes that are being proposed.
Any questions? Yeah, I think the revisions really are very straightforward. They're easy to read. They're easy to understand. I felt like our previous document was like reading a legal document, and this is kind of more of a bullet point and more updated in its approach. So I'm looking forward to having the board weigh in on this as well.
Yeah, and Marty, I'll just say what's great about this, Jordan, I think is it does condense, cuts to the chase. And if you want a deeper dive, it gives the references to go into as opposed to the current one, which is it's good and a lot of good work put into it. But now that we have, I think, a firmly established senior leadership team and an organized onboarding plan, people will know where to go for incoming board members. They don't need to really read through the 54 pages of, it was a good document, probably a lot to digest, where this one's a hell of a lot more digestible. So great work on consolidating it by those who did it.
Thank you.
All right, so our self-assessment.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So in accordance with the board policy manual, the board conducts an annual assessment, a self-assessment, as well as a CEO assessment. And we have given here the proposed timeline for that self-assessment this year. And we have targeted a start date of October 18th and to complete that self-assessment, for the board to complete that self-assessment by November 15th. This committee will receive the results of that assessment at its January meeting, and Chair Lanahan will share the results with the full board at the January meeting, full board meeting just a few weeks later. These assessments will be conducted through diligence, so please let us know if there are any password challenges in advance, and we'll make sure you have the appropriate access. The assessment this year will consist of 8 questions, 2 of which, the last 2 on this slide, are open-ended, so the board has an opportunity to express multiple areas of effectiveness and/or room for improvement as they provide their assessment at the board level. And we're happy to discuss any of these 8 items here, should you wish to, but this is the proposed questions this year for the board self-assessment.
We also talked, Jordan, about sharing the prior year's assessment at the August retreat so that we can make sure that we're following up on any items that are dangling from last year's self-assessment. So
yes,
want to
ma'am.
make sure this is a continuous process, that we hold ourselves accountable to what we said we wanted to do last year.
Yes, ma'am. We'll be sure to do that.
Yeah.
If you want me to,
Marty,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Jordan. Just one thing, and we can talk this later in August, but it's the 4th one, I think, where it refers to and to be an ambassador for JEA. Last year, that was part of our assessment, one of the criteria, and I think across the board members, sort of what exactly defines an ambassador. It was a good ambassador. Now it's just an ambassador, but we still may need a little bit more clarification on what exactly JEA is looking for us as board members to be an ambassador, at least get that viewpoint too, because for me, it's still a little bit fuzzy.
Yes, sir. We'll be happy to provide some clarification around that.
Yeah, Joe, that's a great point, especially as it pertains to potentially a non-COVID restricted world, because we haven't really been able to be out and about being ambassadors. So I think clarification on that is important.
Yeah, we'll take that as a follow-up item, Marty, and get back on that one.
And we did, I did ask Jody to provide, because I know it's part of our reappointment process, to provide attendance information to us in the August meeting as well. So, I think that's important to add to this. We have added them.
Great. And then Marty, one more thing. So we used to have a criteria where board members understand the measures of effectiveness. And I sort of got it, so just bear with me for a second. We sort of see those MOEs when we do the CEO evaluation with the JEA scorecard. However, the only thing I'm sort of concerned about is, and we can wait till we get to the CEO evaluation, but when you look at the performance scorecard, it covers water MOEs, but on the electric ones, we're sort of leaving out, I think, 3 of them, the SADI, SAFE, and CME 5 for electric, unless I'm missing something. So and again, we'll see it here in a sec, so I don't mean to jump ahead, but for the board members on understanding the MOEs, pretty straightforward with that JEA performance scorecard. But I'm just sort of worried that we're cutting short on the electric ones. And I just throw that out there. Thanks.
That's a good observation, Joe. I think you're right. We'll see that here in a second. So do you think that in looking at the board assessment, to your point, when we talk about mission, vision, and strategic focus, do you feel like we should put success metrics and performance metrics in the board assessment's responsibility? I mean, it's kind of in here with proper oversight, but it's not called out specifically. So I mean, this is the place. This is the place where we would recommend that change.
I'm sort of thinking yes, Marty. I only say that for the current board, everybody's so familiar because we had a whole 7 pages on Category 4 with MOEs. We're all familiar with that. For a new board member, again, they can get familiar with it, but it may not be a bad idea to add it into this so that they know that there are measures of effectiveness out there that really they have to have a understanding of because they're going to be using that to evaluate the CEO, among other things.
Yeah, I don't have a problem functionally. Jordan, Jody, is that a problem if we add in that as a specific item?
No, ma'am.
I don't think it is. I mean, you'll have the scorecard to be able to do, to look at the metrics, from a success metrics perspective. So would you add it as a separate question on this self-assessment, or would you just add it to the mission, vision, strategic focus area, and measure the?
I think to Joe's point, for me, it's a separate item because mission, vision, strategic is kind of the future, and performance metrics are kind of the current day. So I would add it as a separate item.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I
We'll take
agree,
a look. We'll make sure we add it in the most appropriate way to make sure we fulfill the desire of the committee.
Yeah, I think that's important, Joe. Thanks for bringing that up. All right. So Jody, Jordan, if you can just kind of revisit with me before we bring this to the board, and let's see what the language looks like. That'd be great.
Okay.
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
do it.
We don't have an action. We can't action on anything, so that's good. But today we get to recraft a little bit. Awesome. Thank you. How about our CEO evaluation?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. This evaluation will follow a very similar path. I will just note two additional items here in that by October 10th, Jay will provide a self-evaluation to the committee, through this committee to the full board, to give you the measure of his performance, so that you all can take that into account as you perform the CEO evaluation. And the other step in this that is different from the self-assessment is that Jay will meet with the board chair in December to go over the results of that evaluation before it comes back to this committee and then to the full board in January. And so provided here are the executive core competencies together with other items, including compliance with the charter and succession planning. And as we just discussed, part of the CEO evaluation will be the performance scorecard that you all see on a regular basis at the board meetings. And we will provide information around JEA's performance relative to that scorecard for the boards to aid the board in their evaluation of the CEO this year. Happy to answer any questions or have dialogue around this topic as well.
Do you want to go to the scorecard? Is it the next?
It's the next slide.
So General DeSalvo, on the performance scorecard, you had a comment earlier.
Yeah, Jody. So, right. So we, looking at it, we cover the water pretty good with, I'm just trying to, I hope I was looking at the right one. Yeah. So water reliability, very bottom, we do those MOEs. I don't see any for electric, for the electric CME5, SADI and SAFE MOEs. And so I'm just sort of, wondering why we don't have those in there, just like we do for the water.
General DeSalvo, this is Jordan Pope. The CME5 is the fourth bullet from the bottom, which is customers experiencing multiple interruptions metric. That is the CME5 measure. And the one just below that, the effective forced outage rate, is a generation reliability statistic that we follow. We certainly have SADI and SAFE metrics as well and are happy to communicate those. But those two that I just called out are electric performance measures that we. Yes, sir.
It looks like it's under a water category.
It does.
The way it's listed there, but those
we'll see if we can reorder that to make it a little more clear.
But
okay, thanks, Jordan.
I think regardless, Joe, your point on the board assessment that we manage and review the operational functional functions of the JEA, I think it's appropriate for us to pull that forward. I mean, I think that was just a miss in a previous assessment.
Right.
So I still maintain that we should make that change in the board assessment.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree, Marty. Thanks.
Madam Chair, that concludes that portion unless there's any other questions.
No, nothing from me. Anything else from Joe? John?
Nope.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jordan. Is there any old business to come before the Governance, Audit, and Compliance Committee? Any new business?
Before you adjourn the meeting, Chair Lanahan, I just want to thank you for being the chair of this committee. And the inaugural meeting, I think it went very well today. And I really appreciate you and the board's attention, and Chair General DeSalvo and Chair Baker. Really appreciate you guys as being our board members and participating in this committee today.
Well, we appreciate you. I think the new committee structure is really going to bode well for us in the future. It creates more dialogue opportunities with the board, and I think more touch points with the board. And I think we've all wanted to be more engaged. So I'm excited about this committee go forward. And it's governance, audit, and compliance. In my mind, of course, I'm a banker. It's the most important committee of all. And I want to thank Jody. This was her new kind of being in charge of this committee. She prepared the team well and prepared me well for the meeting. So thank you to everybody. And congrats again to Rashid and Lee for their promotions. Let's not let it out that Steve Tootin was potentially, he could perceive this as being replaced by 2 people. I know that's not what happened, because there's that's not what happened, but be prepared. I love it. Well, we will stand adjourned, and our next committee meeting will be October 13th. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. Great job. Thanks, Jody.